A controversy is swirling over the National Memorial to Canada's mission in Afghanistan. A jury had selected what is known as the Daou team, given the involvement of the architecture firm Daou Lestage Lizotte Stecker. However, in June, that decision was rejected by then Veterans Affairs Minister Lawrence Macaulay, who instead picked what is known as the Stimson team after visual artist Adrian Stimson. On Monday, La Presse reported on access to information documents obtained by the Bloc that suggested the Prime Minister's office was involved in the issue. Former Supreme Court Justice Louise Arbour was part of the Daou team, and she joins me now. So how did it feel to know you weren't being chosen?
Actually, it was, I think, shocking. It's probably the first thing that comes to mind. I have to say I had to read the letter twice, which said, literally, even though you have been selected by the jury as having won the competition, the Government of Canada has decided to give the contract to another team. I thought I must have misread that. This can't be true. And with, of course, no opportunity to make any kind of representation. This was a couple of hours before a press conference. So yeah, shocking. And then getting into a little more details about it and thinking about it, it's more than shocking. It's completely unacceptable.
And the Bloc has obtained documents suggesting the Prime Minister's office was involved in that decision. Is it acceptable to you?
Quite honestly, the documentation that I've seen, it's very difficult. A lot of the things are caviardé, redacted, so you can't tell, like, for instance, it seems like they got an opinion from the Justice Department as to whether this was open, but it's all scratched out. So what level of involvement the Prime Minister... We wrote a letter to the Prime Minister in, I think, mid-September, copying all the ministers who may have any kind of involvement. So Heritage, Veterans Affairs, Global Affairs, there were lots of civilians in that mission, Public Works, Treasury Board. We copied all these ministers, telling the government this is not acceptable. There's a lot of outrage out there, urging the Prime Minister's office to reverse that decision, whoever made it, because technically it was supposed to be made by the ministers of Heritage and Veterans Affairs, and to reverse it. And we never got any answer. We got an acknowledgement or received the letter to 15th September. No answer from anybody. And in the meantime, several of these ministers, I could tell you, have called me on occasions to ask an opinion, not a retainer or anything, just, what do you think of? I take their calls. Nobody is us.
So what we know so far, what we heard, is that a spokesperson for the Veterans Affairs Minister said the Stimson team's design was favored in a 2021 online survey. She said the majority of the people who commented on the designs were veterans, their families, and others who served on the mission. Isn't it reasonable that they want to respect veterans' preferences?
Well, it was part of the rules of the contest. Of course, I think public acceptability in public arts, it's perfectly fine to ask the public what they think. But that's not the content. These were not the rules. The rules provided that the result of that survey were to be made available to the jury, which they were, and the jury took that into account as one of the elements upon which they had to make the decision. And furthermore, we were supposed to be given an opportunity to make a presentation to the public before, to explain our monument is, in the eyes of some, very abstract. And so all the teams were supposed to be invited to make a public presentation before the survey. That didn't happen. But the jury had the results of the survey in hand, took it into account, and despite all that, gave it some weight. But there was never any suggestion that this decision would be made on the basis of a public opinion survey. And I can assure you if that had been the case, I don't think the team of which I was a member would have bothered. This is not the way sophisticated presentation of a public art project is to be evaluated.
Mm-hmm. And what would you like to see happen from here? What should happen, in your opinion?
The government should reverse a decision for which it has zero support. we've seen all the opposition parties, and this is not, small politics, game playing, including a couple of members of the Liberal parties, agree that this was a mistake. It's very easy, and the government has done it in the past, really to their credit, to apologize for historical mistakes. Well, it's a lot easier to apologize for the mistakes of others than to recognize your own them, and even better, correct them in real time, which is right now. I think the government should recognize that this is a very bad precedent for the allocation of public work through procurement processes, not only in the architecture field, but in public works generally. Very bad precedent, very public, that the government essentially doesn't follow its own rules. So they should immediately say, in retrospect, this was a mistake. They were rules, we should have followed them, and they should award us the contract.
Mrs. Arbour, thank you very much for being with us today.
My pleasure.